I was talking to Lava yesterday, I was like, yeah,
'Cause
like even 2 years,
I've
it's like,
2 years. If this, that's gonna be the recommendation of the council, we get 2 years. That's it. Because then by then, there's housing, moving the housing. But somebody out there, or nameless, seems to be really opposed to doing anything else.
And again, they won't pump.
We are live.
Interest there, but not even guarantee it. Like they look at one page.
There's literally.
So,
Okay.
I'm a little sad with that.
Let's maybe take some notes to stand there.
that's what you did.
No, that's not management.
Right? I text Randy and he said 9:30 and, oh, yes, oh. And it's still be late.
The building is still late.
It's not. So it's.
Okay.
There's like three.
Is that guy coming that today, or is it just?
It's just me.
Look at that time, 4 seconds.
Yeah.
Lots of time. It's, 9. Oh,
But not a lot of time.
we gotta do something with that.
Alright.
Call the meeting to order. I acknowledge the Smoking Valley, of which we learn, work, and organize the council to respond on cities of the smoking people, from the smoking Indian ban. Adoption of the agenda.
So movement.
Thank you, Councilor Elliott. Second.
Second, I'm sorry.
Councilor Lewis. All in favor? Carried. We have Carolyn here to do the annual wild safe presentation. So the 15 minutes is yours.
You're welcome, everybody. As you know, my name is Carolyn Blank, and I'm here to report on the 2024 season of the Wild Safe BC program. How many of you have experienced interactions with wild? Raise your hands. Right? That's all of us, right? And often when I do these presentations, I engage with the public to give me a better understanding of what they're experiencing in the community and the group as a whole to hear what's going on with the wildlife in town. So I'm just going to put the councillors and mayor on the spot today. And I'll start on my left. Tyler, please tell us about one of your wildlife experiences.
Oh, what we always have, up at the subdivision, they've got deer all over the place. And yeah,
Absolutely.
Yeah.
See them every day, don't we?
yeah.
Sure.
Well, at work, I have to be aware of the bears. I mean, in the fall. And then in my yard, I have to make sure there isn't any deer in, because I live in town, but it's a little bit rural. And we have deer that use our corridor as a path down to the creek. So we often have does and fawns in the yard, so we just have to make sure before we let the dog out, if there isn't any out there.
Absolutely, yes.
Well, on the farm, we got deer, mountain goats, bears, cougars, bobcat, lynx,
That's wonderful.
all that comes out of the yard.
Dog walking your dog, chased by a deer.
It's a scary
I don't know,
experience.
it's like, I don't have as much
No, that's,
goodwill towards.
when you've had one of those experiences, it makes you apprehensive and defensive and unfavorable towards encountering wildlife in the area.
Well, the dog is this big. That deer had got hold of it with the hooks and stuff.
Yeah, their hooves are designed to crush the skull of coyotes and wolves. And they are designed to inflict a lot of damage to themselves. Yeah, they can be very dangerous animals.
I have deer in my yard all the time. I have fawns born in my yard every year. I encounter deer on the trail. I usually give them a very wide berth. I don't mind doing that, but it does restrict my access to things.
Yeah, we do have to make changes in our daily lives to live in an area with lots of wildlife. Absolutely.
Why?
Why is it not on the screen? There we go. That's my backyard. This is, we do live in wildlife country, absolutely. Cool, and it's done. Yeah, absolutely, and as you guys have mentioned, deer seem to be the #1 reported wildlife in the area, but also we get reports of bears, moose, elk, wolves out Old Headley Road and Black Mine area are really starting to increase in the area. Rats, mice, raccoons, you know, they're not a pest yet, but lots of people tell me they're seeing them. Porcupines, bobcats, lynx, you know, we do live in wildlife country and they are all around us, which is why Princeton has a Wild Safe BC program, you know, to teach the new people moving into town how to live safely in wildlife country, what to do in a wildlife encounter, and how to prevent those interactions. So this is the Town of Princeton reports coming from all the way from 2014 to 2024. There is a lot of variation in this data because up until just recently, a lot of this information came off the Wildlife Alert Reporting Program. That was just what was shared with us on that site from the Conservation Officer Service. And had different end dates for the season depending on program hours. So sometimes this program can end at the end of September, and sometimes it can end at the end of November, depending on the so that will impact the numbers, but it does give you a pretty good idea of wildlife reports to the Conservation Officer Service. This in 2024, this year we had 93 reports, and that was from January 1st to November 12th, 2024. By animal. So as you can see, deer are pretty steady in their reporting. Black bear has consistently been going down in reports to conservation. I like to think that has a lot to do with the Wild Safe BC program and just one person at a time doing a better job of managing their garbage. Other cougar and then other on the end there. And other consisted of elk, mountain goat, raptor, moose, coyote, and badger. Year after year, the majority of calls to the Conservation Officer Service are patient or distressed. We love our animals. A lot of people love seeing the deer, living in an area with lots of wildlife, and they care about them. And the number one call, so 57 out of the 93 calls to the Conservation Officer Service in that time were for injured or distressed wildlife. 13 was for sightings, and then 2 for aggressive, 6 in the for retractant like garbage or being fed. 3 for property damage, 3 in a confined space, like in a vehicle, stuck in a vehicle or shed. 6 killed livestock, and 3 were dead wildlife reports. Which, of course, after chatting with you guys, 93 reports of wildlife in the area is really low, right? We're seeing them every single day in our lives. So this is just what's being reported. And local mule deer are the #1 reports. So they had 49 of the reports this year. They can have unpredictable behavior during spawning season of the rut. It is possible for them to cause harm to people. They are a big, strong animal that should be able to defend itself in the wild. Although studies show that after the 2nd generation of fawns being born in town, they no longer have an adequate predator response to survive in the wild. They cause many vehicle accidents. I'm currently driving a Kermac collision car because a deer jumped out and took out the front right of my car. Car behind me hit it. We were going at high speed on the highway. It was pretty scary. Deer can learn to see people as a source of food. So we've been hunting them for food and furs for thousands of years. Normally, they are very wary of us. They see people, they run away, right? If it sees you in the wild, you go food, they're gone. But in town, they have learned a different response to people from people feeding them. They have learned that to see people as a source of food, and they learn to be unafraid of us. That creates dangerous encounters. Them coming up to our doorsteps to get food, laying close to our homes, walking right up to people, and those close encounters can end disastrously because they are a wild animal. That people are like, oh, they're tame. I'm like, no, they're not tame. They're either hungry or they're not hungry. They learn to be unafraid of people and learn to remove the threat of dogs. So in combination with learning to be unafraid of people, seeing people as a source of food, not running away from them and coming close to them, there's also this Other scenario happening where there's dogs out of yards chasing the deer, off leash chasing the deer. You know, I've been out on a walk for many occasion and the dog was off running in a bush chasing a fawn and deers are coming to attack their dog to protect their fawn. Then every person who walked in that area after was attacked by the deer, whether their dog was on leash or off leash. This is a learned behavior that they see the need to remove the threat of the dog proactively. Just like they learn to be unafraid of people, they could learn to be unafraid of dogs. But the opposite is happening. It creates this really dangerous situation where people who are out with their dogs have deer coming up to them, attacking their dogs, and not being able to be dissuaded by the person. All two of the aggressive reports in the town of Princeton were for deer in town. They are attracted to fruit trees, gardens, and flowers. This year we had a really poor fruit harvest, you know, and we saw the deer behavior change in downtown Princeton, right on the downtown core where many of the trees didn't have the fall that they usually do. You didn't see the deer hanging out there like they usually do. They are more attracted to the fruit trees than the bears are. They're also known, I hear it from residents all the time, the deer stomp open garbage bags to eat chicken bones and just garbage and scraps because they've learned that they can get food from there as well. They often hide in tall grass and brush and camouflage very well, so they're hard to see and they create surprise encounters. And like you were saying, they do discourage people from walking sometimes after they've had that scary experience and don't want to experience it again. But the second highest report is for black bears with 28 reports this year. Black bears are a very strong, carnivorous, dangerous animal. You know, they can be unpredictable. They seem very calm and laid back, but they can move at 13 meters per second and everything happens very fast. Something I'm noticing, especially teaching the kids of our youth, like in the schools and things, the general public does not understand how dangerous these animals are. The reason they have been historically removed by the Conservation Officer Service when they start hanging around town is because they have big teeth and big claws and they really can kill them. And they're not angry, they're not, but you can encounter a bear that maybe had a cavity, right? A rotten tooth and is in a lot of pain. It could have just gotten in a fight with another bear. It could have been hit by a car, chased by a dog. Every scenario you're walking into with wildlife can have an outcome that you're not expecting. There could be cubs you can't see, you name it. These animals are unpredictable and they really can cause a lot of damage. They're very, very dangerous. They have a potential for habituation, just like the deer, creating more of a danger to people. Right? You see it in campgrounds quite often, you know, that bear that just walks down the middle of the campground, everybody's yelling at it, banging its pants, and it's like, yeah, whatever, I'm not listening to you, right? They get really comfortable being close to people, coming up to our homes, coming on our porches and balconies and things like that. And it's just a learning curve, you know, wildlife has this amazing memory for where they found food, how they got it, and they will return to those places and those behaviors to feed themselves over and over again. They can destroy property to access garbage, being a shed or a fence, things like that. It's the bears that start getting a taste for garbage that become more bold in destroying property to get to it. They will prioritize high-calorie foods such as garbage, birdseed, and pet food over fruit trees and composters. I've seen bears walk right past fruit on the ground under a fruit tree in favor of a garbage can down the street. But it is an apex animal that shows we are still coexisting with wildlife. And you can see this photo. That's our town of Princeton. Bears, you know, perusing town. They're really, really smart. In urban areas, they become very nocturnal. They know when town is quiet. They hide in the cover of darkness, and they'll come into town at that time. So how do we prevent this? It's all about the food. No, they're just doing their thing, trying to survive, trying to find food all the time. Whether that's them being fed, bird feeders, fruit trees, garbage, pet food, the grease trap on your barbecue, improperly managed compost, and sometimes, well, for other animals as well, rare producing shrubs and gardens. So how do I help people learn? Wildlife has these learning behaviors, that they live on the landscape, and there's things you can do to live safely, work, play, live, and grow safely in wildlife. Well, I had a lot of fun this year with the WildSafe Ranger presentations to our schools. Here is just a couple of the photos, so many great photos. This was John Allison Elementary, each class individually, and this year I developed an obstacle course. So I harvested bushes from the forest that had been eaten by wildlife, got water and chocolate-covered raisins, pile of scat, right? Got my bones out, got my deer hide on a drying rack and my bear hide on a drying rack, and we did this obstacle course as a bear, right? So we were a bear doing bear things in the woods, eating, looking for food, finding water, finding food, finding a carcass in the woods, finding bear bones in the woods, taking a dump in the woods. Encountering a deer and encountering a bear, right? So with a deer, you know, we tried to chase the deer, but of course an adult deer is a little bit too fast for a bear to catch. And then we encountered a bear, and they are so big and strong. Often bears don't get in fights right away. They communicate with each other. They look big and loud and strong and try to dissuade each other from getting in a fight before they actually attack each other. And we can use, by knowing that, we did the obstacle course a second time as people. We saw the shrubs that had been eaten by the wildlife. We saw scat on the ground. We encountered bones and carcasses and things, and assessed whether we needed to leave the area right away if there was an animal still feeding on it. We gave the deer lots of space, because in Princeton, you have to react differently to the deer than a wild deer. If you look big and loud and scary and try and scare that deer away, it's actually going to turn and have a standoff with you. It's actually better to cross to the other side of the street, stay calm and quiet, not look at it like a predator, look away from it, and walk past quietly, and you will get a less reaction out of our town deer, urban deer, than you would otherwise. Yeah, and so it was, for this age range, it was a great fun activity that really gave them context of why we behave this way in wildlife country. That was a lot of fun. And then for the older kids, this is the Brilliant Works Elementary. So, these guys think they can outrun a deer and outrun a bear. And so I had them see if they could outrun a deer and outrun a bear, jump higher than a cougar and climb faster than a bear. And of course they couldn't. So then we practiced what to do in a wildlife encounter. Of course, every single presentation I do, I start with what I started with you guys. It's all about the food, right? It's all about food accessibility, and that they're just looking for the food. But I also covered a little bit of dog obedience in the class, right? Keeping your dog quiet and under control, and again, giving the deer lots of space to go through the area to get a non-reaction from the deer. And then in the fall, we did a pumpkin pitch. So again, programs with each of the classes on attractant management for the wildlife, especially in the fall. We got lots of bears around and things like that. And after Halloween, the kids got to all bring their pumpkins back to school. And we did bowling with the pumpkins and smashing the pumpkins in a kiddie pool. I mean, how often do they actually get to smash their pumpkins? It's a blast. And then all the pumpkins went to a local homestead where keeping them off people's porches and out of the landfill. And then I did presentations at the Princeton Library and the Headley Library. So I did 4 each, 2 in July and 2 in August for both libraries. And at this one, instead of like just a presentation style, I do a mystery animal game. So the wildlife, I read off a bunch of clues, which is wildlife, right? And as they think they know what the wildlife is, they can go to a table and pick what foods they think it's going to eat. And then one by one, they get to come up to, I have this board with an urban area and a wild area, and they get to say what animal they think it is, and then put the foods they picked either in the wild area or the urban area. And then we talk about how, the garbage can goes in the garage, I have a little house and everything on the urban area, and you put all those foods in the house, then the wildlife goes back to the wild, where it's safer for them and safer for us. Yeah, so and all 4 presentations are a different animal. So I do bear, deer, cougar, and owl. I had this amazing owl. And just this year I had a bobcat donated to the program, so I can add bobcat to those presentations as well. This summer I did 2 hike and learns at Swan Lake. All the kids were so cute. They're like, "Are you a plant expert as well as a wildlife expert?" I was like, "I do my best." Of course, I had just, pre-hiked the route and got one of those Plant This app, and then, identified all the plants, so I could talk to the kids about them on the hike and things like that. But of course, we found signs of wildlife everywhere, right? Coyote scat everywhere, rodent holes, we had a turtle, all that fun stuff. So, and I did that with the HEART program with Nadine and the recreation team and the Princeton homeschoolers. Different occasions. I also did 5 WildSafe BC presentations. So one, help following that attractant management program, I developed a vermicomposting workshop this year. So I got a vermicomposter and a ton of worms, and I teach people how to vermicompost because it's a great alternative because you can do it indoors. It's small scale and they eat a ton of food, and you can do it year round. Instead of, having a composter outdoors, which I find often in Princeton just dry out and stay the same. But it's a great way to have a fun and interesting presentation on wildlife attractant management in a new way. And I also did a PowerPoint presentation this year with a group. So that was really well received. And I got a ton of fantastic feedback, a wonderful presentation. I just wanted to thank you for your presentation today. It was so informative. I really enjoyed all that you shared. Plus, nice to hear all you do to educate Princeton. You do a lot. Yes. And this is all in the report. I hope you guys read it because it really does a really great job of explaining why we have a deer problem. Yeah, so lots of feedback this year. And of course, I did a wildlife safety and bear spray workshop with Papa Mountain Mine for their new environment team crew. And I did 19 community, so I did 30 ranger presentations, those wildlife ranger presentations throughout the summer. I did 30 of them. I did 5 community presentations and workshops, 19 community event booths. I support a lot of the events happening in Princeton. I create this big display. I have all my wildlife props, but I also have tons of crafts and activities and great information that engages all ages. And I, support a lot of the events in Princeton. If you want. The community market, the pop-up markets, sorry. Yeah, Canada Day, the Princeton Rodeo, Mine Day, Tulameen Days, Copper Valley Music Festival, Headley Fair, Harvest Fair, High School Rodeo, Ridgewood Block Party, Whistling Kettle Disc Golf Tournament, and Family Fun Halloween. Again, lots of fun. And Town Hall administration actually said they had a number of people come in to doing town stuff and comment on how wonderful and helpful the wildlife lady was that they met at an event in town. So the messaging's getting out there, and it's just wonderful to get such nice feedback. BC Goes Wild event. So in September, I did a couple just specific special events to, because it's the month with the highest human wildlife conflict. I did a teddy bear picnic where everybody brought their teddy bears and their blankets, and I had a scavenger hunt and a ton of crafts and activities and an annual coloring contest and photo contest. Vermicomposter was a huge hit, and this year I added to my birdseed display with all my rubber rats, a rodent bucket track. You know, the flippy lid, the little ramp that goes up, and actually I've had a ton of people in town purchase them now that they've seen it firsthand working, and you know, so we're managing our wildlife in more ways than just attractive management through the program. And the kids actually had a real blast with it too. And I did 2 bear spray workshops in downtown Veteran Square where the public was all welcome. I advertised it online and at the grocery store, at the post office, and people come out to learn how to counter a variety of wildlife and use bear spray safely. Door-to-door education. Or you know, I pick a community that often they ask me to come out to do door-to-door education. Sometimes I take a picture if they've got a nice big sign, and it's lots of fun. It's always very well received. Get lots of wildlife information from it. But also there's some challenging conversations too. I have people tell me, oh, they're not going to feed the deer anymore, but they clearly are. People that, you know, oh, there's only kitty litter in my garbage can, sort of thing. I'm also directed out by either the town of Princeton or the Conservation Officer Service. The picture on the right there is from a home that, you know, had huge bear activity. They thought the bear was getting in their vehicle and was in their yard all the time. And when I went to visit them, I actually was like, hey, this is a house that I'm continually garbage tagging every night. So what's going on here? And it turns out it was a senior lady who was getting care, and their caregivers were putting the garbage out the night before garbage pickup. And so, you know, I had a chat with community services, and they were able to make the change, and now they only put her garbage out in the morning before garbage pickup. And as far as I know, she hasn't seen as much bear activity. So that was a great outcome for that scenario, and just a great example of how just, you know, learning what the problem is and helping people find solutions. And I'm, you know, Princeton and District Family Service Society, every time I come to them with a problem, they do an amazing job of finding a solution. The healthcare center, they had a bear getting in their garbage all the time from the river. I said, hey, you know what, we need to do a better job of securing your garbage. They purchased one of those metal bins to put their garbage in, and they did it across the community. They were having, at all their offices, they were having a problem with bears getting to people putting their garbage out at Aspen Grove. And I went and had a conversation with them, and they got a communal garbage can for the whole area that has the locking bar, and they don't put their garbage out individually anymore. And then here they're not putting the person's garbage out the night before, they're doing it in the morning. So every time I've come to them with a problem, they put in huge effort and infrastructure to find a solution, and that has been successful. So kudos to that. Garbage bin tagging. So that's great. I really find in the summer when I'm doing it, I actually end up having a lot of one-on-one conversations. So many of these 207 garbage bins that we tag, I still document them, but I want to say 10% of them, the people were like, hey, what are you doing near my garbage can? And after chatting with me, took the garbage back into the house. It was pretty great. While out garbage tagging one evening, I heard rustling in the garbage can. I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm gonna get a picture of wildlife in the garbage can. I went to go take a picture, and it was a house cat eating the garbage. So, you know, it's not, animals like food, right? It's not just limited to wildlife. Had conversations with the Chevron about, so they're having trouble on long weekends. You know, the added volume of garbage and the extended day of pickup, they don't have the infrastructure to manage those. And so we're in talks to help them understand that they need to either get picked up twice a week or something like that. It just seems to be during, especially the summer long weekends. But all the way through summer, as in all the way through October, like Thanksgiving weekend. And then often people are using them for more than just walking down the street and tossing their sippy cup into the garbage. And that could be because of, maybe homeless people don't have an alternative way of disposing their garbage. And also, especially recreational people from Missoula Lake, Tulameen, all those places, wanting to dispose of their garbage and not being able to drop it off at the landfill on a Sunday. Garbage is the number one cause of all human wildlife conflict. It's a high calorie source of food, right? It's got your oils and your greases and your meats and your bones and your threads, and it's just the number one attraction for all wildlife. In my report, I go into more detail about the issues with these flimsy plastic garbage cans with no flap on them, right? The wildlife's just able to get right in and pull it all out. And they're a perfect design that I'm sure you've seen it any number of days. It's for people just to stuff their garbage in that little section of the top of it, right on top of the hole, right? It just, they'll stuff that area full. On a more positive note, the new garbage cans that have been installed on the KBR and at the Twin Rivers Park, the big green ones with the small hole with the flap, they have been bear tested. Residents told me they saw a bear try and get into it. It had its nose in the hole, but wasn't able to pull much garbage out. Because they're being partially buried in the ground, they haven't yet pushed them over, dragged them away, and work on them that way. So they so far seem to be bear resistant. Social media and press. You wouldn't believe Castanet this year just picked up a ton of my Facebook page posts and shared them with the rest of the province. I was really impressed with that. Yeah, reached over 16,000 users. Got 93 new users for the Facebook page. Year over year, I'm getting about almost 100 new people a year, which is super. Wild Safe BC Business Clubs, the Whistling Kettles Golf Course and Copper Mountain Mine will participate in this program this year. I'm really impressed with both those groups. They, accept reviews of their sites and make implementations on the recommendations. And want to live the safest way for both the wildlife and their staff on those sites. This is it, future goals. So, it would be helpful for training by Wild Safe BC for the Town of Princeton Hall Administration and Bylaw Department on answering human wildlife conflict questions. Continued education to reach new town residents, future homeowners, and for the public to maintain the required to consistently manage wildlife attractants. Continue to prepare people to safely encounter wildlife. More engagement by the Princeton bylaw to address feeding of deer, dogs out of yards and off leash, and address garbage being stored outdoors. Removal of downtown Town of Princeton garbage cans. Increase in mileage to cover more of Area H. Princeton is like 286 kilometers and Area H is like 4,000 kilometers. Our program doesn't have the funding to be educating Area H like it does the Town of Princeton. Funding to repair or replace well-used tent and displays. My zippies have broken off. It's seven years old now. Plus the 2 years before me. It's worn out. Funding to repair and replace next one. Increase in program funding to provide more hours for a wider variety of education. Every year is a little different, and I focus on different things every year. But there is more this program can do, if it had more hours. Are there any questions?
Go ahead.
Ready?
Ladies first.
Carolyn, when you get these notifications about defeating the deer,
Mhm.
do you relay that to the bylaw department?
Yes. And I also recommend that the people relay it to the bylaw department.
Perfect.
Mhm.
And then the pictures of the downtown rich, that's kind of sad to see, right? Because we made a pledge to put bear-proof garbage containers in, and I know we did along the KBR and at the ballpark and stuff like that, so we can do better.
Yeah.
But you're right, people do conveniently just stick their garbage beside it instead of disposing of it properly, so. Avoiding problem.
Province-wide, BC Parks is experiencing that as well as.
Of these new,
I'd have to look.
that's it.
You still have the old garbage cans, the concrete ones that were very heavy with the lid with the flap. And if you just do a better job of securing the lids to the concrete bases, they would
Yeah.
more adequate.
We'll have to get more,
And they had that old silver.
yeah.
Randy, you had a question?
What are the deer numbers?
The deer numbers?
No, she doesn't do the gym stuff.
So the deer out of the 93 calls, 49 were for deer. And 2 were for aggressive deer.
Do we not do a deer count in the town of Princeton?
Not heard.
No.
Just not heard.
I mean, I could, but I focus on education at this time.
Yeah, and honest, like, in regards to the 2 reports, that seems quite low if you're, like, even Councilman McLean says he has direct knowledge of somebody, like, so either they're not reporting it to the conservation office, which is what we need people to do, to actually address the issues, or they're potentially, the encounters are going down because of the education. So I don't know which one it is.
I
It
would
could be
say it's
both.
both, absolutely. And just like this reporting has its flaws, a deer count does as well. Depends on the season, the time of year, the time of day. They, and just because you have a problem deer in one area, it could be the same deer in multiple
My perspective, when you're talking about deer as a problem, not as a, as far as I'm concerned, if people want to live in one of the deer, go move out to the forest, live in the forest. But when you're talking about, I would think that if it isn't something that interests you, then someone, to me, it would be,
Deer
as
committee.
far as I'm concerned, vital to know, have an idea of where is it increasing? Is it getting worse or isn't it? Is it going down or whatever? I can't believe that with all this work that you do or conservation does or whatever, we have no idea about deer count because it's so hard to count them. And
You know what, that's a great point. It all comes down to funding. I mean, in my program, I focus on outreach and education. If I had more hours in my program, I would do more documentation. So I do
Okay.
respond to a lot of calls and
You're doing
have
a lot.
multiple
What I'm
conversations. and
getting
I
at,
come home and
you're doing a lot of education in terms of how people can do things better in terms of garbage and how to live with the deer and everything else. At some point, if it just keeps increasing, if they keep going up,
Mhm.
at what point do you say, we need to do something about this?
sure.
Or we just keep educating them so that they don't. The thing that I read in this report was about people feeding the deer.
Yes.
They don't need to feed them.
No, it's
They're
actually
sitting
really bad
there,
for
they're
them.
sitting there on my, any lawn that I have that isn't fenced in. There's deer living there. You know, at what point in time do you make some decisions about,
So for
we have a
example,
problem here?
second pitch, there's this, home on Villager Ave that I've spoken to multiple times over the past 5 years. I think Ed even visited them, conservation has visited them. They continue to feed the deer. On that stretch of road is where you have had deer attacking children in their yards. And nobody walks their dog down that street because they've been attacked multiple times. And it continues to happen. So while education, works for 80% of the population, when people learn that feeding of the deer is bad for their intestines, they eat leaves and twigs and roughage, especially through the winter months. And these people are feeding them birdseed and bread. It's bad for the digestion. You know, when deer all congregate to one place, just like the avian bird flu, they spread diseases faster. Gives them more calories, so they have more babies. They more survive through the winter. It gives them higher counts of E. coli and diarrhea. Feeding is not good for the deer. And most people, after having a conversation with me, realize even though they want to interact with them and think they're helping and want to see them, that's not the best way to interact with wildlife in our area. There is a 20% of people that will refuse to accept that it's causing more harm than good and continue to feed the deer. These deer get very protective of an area with a good food source. They become very unafraid of people and all those other things that happen. And that is where enforcement comes in. We need to, take a strict policy and encourage people to report people feeding the deer because it teaches them to be unafraid of people, to lay near our homes, lay in our yards, come close to them. Good policy that they're going in the pack room and on the Vancouver Island. Scare, don't stare. Right? We want wildlife to not feel comfortable closing up to us. It's all learned behaviors. Right? Deer that are hunted run away from people. Deer that are fed run towards people. So you're absolutely right in that education has its limits. But from education to enforcement, everything needs funding.
We do need to move on.
Are there any other questions?
No, we have to move on, so, thank you.
Thank you.
All right, feel free to ask me where I live. Feel free to reach out. I've got tons of information to share.
Thank you.
All right, well, thank you for funding the 2024 season of the Wild Save BC program, and you guys have a great winter.
Okay, wow.
Yes, so this is just for information at this point only and to gauge the interest of council. A company by the name of Bramall has made a presentation or has presented, reached out to town staff with an interesting opportunity. I believe the mayor might have stumbled on to this group at one of his meetings. Jared and I actually met with this company in the summer, and the idea that they have is they want to look at an area of town. They're highlighting the tailings area there to plant willows, and these willows are fast growing and a harvestable material. They at this point just want to explore the idea if council is interested or not. The project involves using effluent from the lagoon and to irrigate these willows and to promote the fast growth. This willow project would then produce a harvestable biomass product, which can be used as a reclamation substrate. So it's harvested and chipped. The willows themselves, they contain a lot of good nutrients because they're being fed from the effluent from the sewer lagoon. The advantages are that the presenting would be, somewhat dust control on our tailings. It would improve the soil substrate and structure. It would produce a nutritionally rich wood chip product. It would improve the natural ecosystem, and it would reduce the wastewater volume in our ponds. So there is a potential here for partnership between the company by the name of Ramo, the town of Princeton, and perhaps the mine that would maybe take some of this reclamation substrate, and USIB. So we would be working together on that. The idea of today's presentation and the handout is just to gauge whether or not council is interested in this type of thing at all. And if council is interested, the company representative, John Lavery, would be prepared to sort of develop a little bit further of a business plan and make a formal presentation to council and pursue it a little bit further. So if council is not interested, then, we just end it here. But at this point, it's sort of exploratory. It's an interesting opportunity. It's a way of making use of our tailings, which is just kind of in a natural state at this point. So anyway, I'm happy to answer your questions. Jared and I met with the gentleman, and we were trying to answer your
So
questions.
I'll just jump in there.
Yeah.
So I met these guys at one of the conferences I was at. I asked them to reach out to Lyle because I thought it was a great idea. But like I said, they have one, so the water right up. So instead of it going back to the ground, it can go up there. And then they plant these willows and they're super fast growing, and then they mulch it. So they kind of like combine that sort of thing. And the mine can use it as reclamation. So it's a biomass for that. But not only does it do that, because of the way that they do this, it actually starts creating soil on the tailings. So it actually will reclaim the tailings itself. So the tailings that we have up there where they're growing will eventually create a dirt layer that will be usable surface. For me, it was like a win-win. I talked to them and I said, please reach out to Lyle. They did right away, and they left, and then they came back a couple months ago and called Lyle and Jared. Personally, I think this is a great program, and it's, win-win for all of us. The mine can use it, the fact that the USIB's in negotiations to talk with them as well. I think it just shows that this is a good thing. And then there's also CO2 capture and a lot of other stuff.
I'm having a 25-year-old deja vu moment here, and I'm sure Councilor McLean will too. This reminds me of the GRB project, GRB project Nutripor. Is there any similarity to this?
This is all, so they take up willows, right, and they just mulch that. So there's no biomass, like, it's not that kind of biomass. The biomass is strictly from the willows. So the last one that we have at our tailings is water, right? So then it seeps back in and dissipates, just like a settling liquid. We would take the water out of that and then move it into up there to irrigate, just like we did when we used to have a hayfield up there. So we use that for irrigation on that. And then we grow the willows then grow. They once the willows come to maturity, there was a program out on Anderson Flats there a while ago. They were doing something similar, different type of product. And then they cut it and mulch it. The mulch is then used as the biomass that they use for reclamation. So it's not human waste, it's actual organic from the willows. And then they would take it up to the mine and use it on the mine.
Yeah, I think it's a great idea. There's no doubt about that.
Councilor McLean.
Yeah, Nutripor was where they were hauling the waste from the lower mainland up here. And that, for the most part, it was dry for a couple of years, but they tried to bring in a couple that weren't dry. Jared, do you have any idea of the organic compound of the, we were growing hay out there.
Yeah.
What is that, like, what tailings is just rock, right? And then so we were growing hay on there, so a certain amount of that is being returned to the ground. Is it, it's not ground yet kind of thing?
Not quite. There is some soil. You can tell that, the crops that were there were helping, but that stuff, it doesn't really, it's not a huge substrate there.
But
Yeah,
this would,
almost definitely.
over time, just, yeah,
Yeah,
so.
for sure.
And then the thing that, one of the big deals about when we did the hay was that the hay, they had to, at some point, they had to sharpen the mowers at the golf course every 2 or 3 days. And then after we put the hay on there and everything else, from the dust, right, the dust would blow off the hay and onto the golf course grass. And then they would go along and cut it, and they'd have to sharpen their mowers every 2 or 3 days or something. And then when, like every 2 or 3 weeks, once the dust stopped blowing off. I can't see anything positive out of this. It said something about employees, like so many employees. I can't imagine them needing many employees over here.
This is a very efficient system. It's a drip irrigation from underneath, it's like hydroponics kind of thing, so there's no evaporation or anything. It's good use of the water. There is some labor every 2 years, they would have to harvest.
Yeah, I can see that every 2 years.
Yeah, and they've had some initial discussions with USIB and the mine to make sure that everyone is sort of on board and whatever. And I think the USIB component might be labor and stuff like that. So, yeah, I think it could be a win-win.
How many acres do we have up there?
It's fairly large. When we did our tour out there, it actually was quite a bit larger than I thought. But this program would really get all. We would make use of
The hay, the whole thing.
the hayfield.
Just the hayfield.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Because it's already there, it's easy
Yeah.
to access and stuff. I mean, I would love to see it down the road, but this is a long-term thing, we use the hayfield, then we put it up on the bench, and then we put the bench over. Slowly start building soil across it, right? We just don't have enough water.
Maybe 50 acres in that.
I would imagine, yeah, it's bigger. Can't see
If you're
anything.
up to that.
But,
spot,
oh,
then-
yeah. Yeah, I can't see any negatives really.
You see a lot
Look
of
into it further.
Yeah, so if council's interested, then I'll reach out to this John Lafferty and get him to do more work, and we'll book in a formal presentation that you can present a bit of a business plan and service.
Did you get a 50 bounces off the mine?
He did. He reached out to them. I did confirm with the mine that they've had discussions with them.
And they were positive?
Yeah.
I mean, it'd be great if they could use that with their own stuff.
Yeah.
Literally. Keep them on here, so.
There's more details obviously needed, like their request includes that the potential for Princeton wastewater operators to operate plants.
Yeah.
So there's lots,
Yeah.
there's funds, there's a cost.
Yeah, it sounded like, I mean, we'd have to get more information, but it sounded like it's pretty self-sufficient, but someone would have to check on it to make sure, but they monitor it via the internet. So.
Further information needed.
You guys have your answer?
Yeah, I'll reach out to them.
Great motion.
No, it's information. Okay, with that motion to adjourn.
So moved, Mr. Mayor.
Second.
Rules on favor. We can make it to our next meeting.
Yay.
Still find out what the other stuff. See if material's gonna fund it.
Yeah, that's the hurdle, isn't it? Yeah. Yeah, exactly. Sorry.
Give them some matches.
Yes, exactly.